Hi everyone, I am Renushi and I'd like to talk a little bit about street harassment, what it means, and most importantly, what victims and bystanders can actually do about it if they find themselves in such a situation. So it's actually quite an important time to be talking about a topic like this, especially considering the fact that April is a month dedicated to sexual assault awareness. As you know, street harassment in a country like Sri Lanka is unfortunately very common, and basically what it refers to is any kind of behavior, unwanted, unsolicited behavior perpetrated by usually a stranger in any public place, and that can be public transport or on the streets, wherever. So, what's important here is to know how to understand and deal with such situations, and what is basically encouraged most often is for bystanders to step in and help victims, because if you have had the unfortunate experience of being harassed on the road or in a public place, most of us would say that usually you'd be frozen with fear, you'd not know what to do or confront the perpetrator once you actually muster up that courage, it might even be a little too late. So bystanders in that way have an incredibly significant role to play in curbing such incidents and also standing up on behalf of the victim. So I myself am involved in a campaign called Create a Scene. It's a trilingual campaign also called Ape Basake Epa. You can actually get more resources on how you can be a better and more responsible bystander and actually stand up for victims if you go to our Facebook or Instagram page. It's Create a Scene LK, where we have introduced about 7 steps by which bystanders can actually play a more active role in supporting victims and actually bringing perpetrators to justice. And what's unique about this is that it's mostly non-violent approaches. So one of the steps there's several ways in which you could deal with such a situation as someone who's witnessed an incident of street harassment, and some of the steps that has been introduced through the campaign, for example, are being seen. Make sure that the perpetrator knows that he or she is being watched, and that can be very helpful in dissuading the actions and actually making them stop from harassing an individual or a group of individuals. Another thing that bystanders can actually resort to doing is distracting a perpetrator or a group of perpetrators. For example, you could approach them and ask, can I know the time, for example? So that would actually distract or break their thought process and eventually stop them from harassing someone. So these are actually methods that has come up that does not necessarily involve directly confronting the perpetrator, because those could come with its own consequences, and bystanders and victims can therefore thereafter be subject to physical harm. So that is why a variety of intervention methods are important. Another thing you could do is notice details. If you plan on reporting about the incident to the police or a relevant authority, noticing details can be incredibly helpful if you're helping a victim or if you're going there yourself to report an incident. So it could be something like remembering what the perpetrator was wearing, what they looked like, what the time of the incident was, where did it take place. If you were in a bus, what was the bus route? Do you have the bus number, for example? So those details can be incredibly important in lodging a complaint. And obviously another thing you could do is report to the police, go to the nearest police station, lodge a complaint. And this is one of the best things you could do, actually, if you could do it on the long term, in dissuading perpetrators, because then eventually they know that they will be held to account. And one of the most important steps you can take in terms of speaking up is also speaking out quite loudly on the legal consequences. What would they face within our legal framework, for example? Because sexual harassment in a public place is punishable by law in Sri Lanka, according to Section 365 of the Penal Code, if I'm not mistaken. Verbal harassment, sexual harassment of any nature is punishable by law. So it's important that perpetrators know this, obviously. So you could speak up on that, or just say something else like back off, or you're making this person uncomfortable. Why are you doing this? Please stop, or something along those lines. You could also get the support of other bystanders in the area, so you can have extra support in doing these steps. Something else you can do that does not necessarily involve the perpetrator is support the victim. Give them emotional support, because this is a time where they may feel very vulnerable and they may need someone to talk to. If they're not very open to having a conversation with you or opening up to you, respect their right to privacy, but make sure that they know that you will be there for them, and make sure that they go home safe, or wherever they were heading to safely. So these are some of the steps that bystanders can actually take. And with regards to what you can do as someone at the receiving end of street harassment, if you do have the courage to speak up, please do. But I'd say proceed with caution, because sometimes perpetrators may have a tendency to become violent, and especially if you are in an isolated area, you might want to exercise precaution and think twice about doing that. As much as you may have the courage to, you might actually be putting yourself in harm's way. So assess where you are, assess the situation, assess the time and place, and then make the decision as to if you are going to speak up, and which would be great if you could, and confront the victim directly, which would definitely make them to think twice, especially in the future if they do resort to such actions. If you are not too keen on confronting a perpetrator or perpetrators directly, something else you could do is signal by your hand and just say stop. Sometimes, surprisingly, that is enough for them to back off. Or also something that I actually do quite commonly is to make a neutral face and just maintain eye contact with them, and just non-verbally communicate to them that what they're doing to you is making you uncomfortable and that you need to stop. And sometimes that could be enough for them to actually back off and stop the harassment. So these are some of the various ways in which you, as either a victim or a bystander, can actually do to curb these incidents. Unfortunately, like I said, it's incredibly common, and I'm sure that you or someone you know has experienced street harassment at least once in their lifetime, which is an unfortunate thing here in Sri Lanka. So with collective action, we can do a lot. So please do stand up if you see something similar to this in the future, and most importantly, do not look away.